Okay, so I'm calling the meeting to order at, what time is it? 5:33. We're going to start with the consent agenda. First up, we have two policies to give feedback on, right? We're just giving feedback, right, Lynn?
Feedback on, I'm asking for approval on one and feedback on another. But
Okay.
There's an error I noticed in it.
Okay.
Do you want to take those now? Do you want
On
me
the one we need feedback from, or just?
No. So on the in-district transfer procedure, there was a note on section 1 that we were supposed to strike through, and it's still there. So not counting the district employees' children towards quota. I believe we talked about striking that. We didn't have that in there.
Right, okay.
And then just noting on this one that we need to make a note that the board decided that this would go live during the 21-22 school year.
21-22. Right. Okay.
Correct? Is that what the board decided at the last meeting?
That was my understanding, but people can chime in if they remember something differently. Yeah, my understanding.
Yep.
Okay, good. That was Amy. Kevin, do you remember that as well?
Yeah, that's how I remember it.
Are we talking about the in-district or inter-district?
In district first.
The in-district first? Okay.
In district. Mm-hmm.
So I got a couple of questions
Okay.
on this one. So do people think that there's equity between the Richford Elementary School and the Enosburg Elementary School?
In what way?
Well, as far as educational outcomes.
That's a loaded question.
Well, I think it might be important.
I think there's a lot behind that question that we would need to unpack in terms of like, are you just specifically talking data? Are you talking opportunity?
I'm talking measurable data with
Okay.
whatever you want for that. And my concern is that if there is a difference, right? So there's certainly a difference in test scores, and there's a difference in teacher turnover. So my concern is if we went through with this policy, is what that would do to the equity between the two schools. So if there's a difference between, I'm not concerned if there's no real difference between the two schools. I think this policy is fine. But if there's measurable differences between these two schools, then I'm a little concerned.
Does the capacity of 10 help curb that concern at all?
Well, some.
Because that's throughout your entire district.
That's for K through 8
5.
Or for 5.
8. You're right. 8 K8.
Okay.
So I think I'm getting a sense of what you're worrying about is if we put a policy like this in place, would we take away too much from one and put too much in another?
Exactly.
Would that create greater inequities?
Right.
Correct. That's exactly what I'm worried about.
So this policy was written to ensure that that doesn't happen, because this policy is not intended to create a situation where we would have to hire or produce additional resources in one school because you were taking in so many students from another school. There's
Yeah.
transportation connected to this, and there's a limit of 10 total students, K through 8.
So you think it's okay?
Are you asking me personally, or are you asking the rest of the board?
I'm asking anybody who will listen.
So when the 10 total students, that's in either direction. That's not 10 students going from one school to the other. It's a total combined. Okay.
10 for the district.
I can see your concern, Rick, where the fact that you feel like you might be pulling a group out of one school, and that might change the layout or the offerings and create an inequity.
Yeah, I'm not so much worried about the offerings. I'm worried that you're going to have, again, you're going to have parents that are maybe able to do from one school to the other, being able to do it, and other students not able to do it. And so and again, it's not a huge number and it probably makes no difference, but I can't see how it's going to help, equity between our two schools.
I think that the equity issues between all of our schools, Rick, are, this policy is one small piece to provide some flexibility for students and for families. But in terms of equity throughout all of our schools, there's far more than this policy that is zoomed in and working on those.
Okay.
So I just don't see this as being a driver that we're thinking that this would be something that would fix any equity issues that we have. I just think this is one tool in a lot of things that we're working on.
Okay. And my other question on it, does it make sense to have kids attend one district's elementary and middle school and not be able to attend that high school in that district?
Why wouldn't they?
Do what?
Are you concerned that, I'm going to shut my video off myself, Morgan, because I know you're about to. Remember, the high school kids have Act 129 school choice. So once this policy runs out, let's say a student from Enosburg chooses to go, their parent chooses to send them to Richford, elementary for K-5 and middle school for 6-8. And then they want that child to also go to Richford High School. They would have to apply under Act 129 high school choice, and that child could remain at Richford High School. So they could go all the way through.
But they're also competing, don't we have a cap?
You have a cap that you are not even fractionally close to.
Okay, so we're not close to that cap?
No.
Okay.
And we have a cap on the K-8 too. I mean, you're kind of looking at caps on both sides.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is
All
the
right.
cap?
10. Oh, you mean for high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
would
would it-
like to choose not to answer that question because I'm always going to get it wrong. I will look it up and get back to you. Because remember, this is that confusing conversation we have every February about the difference between the number of kids that you're allowing in and the number of kids that you're allowing out. And one you have more say over than other, which is more of a mathematical formula.
Gotcha.
So I'll get that to you.
Okay.
And the other question, never mind, because I'm not sure. We did it, it's different for each school too, right? I can't, but it's different, I think.
That's the part that's confusing, Rick. I will get this to you. The cap piece, if there's a percentage of your population factor, and because the number of students you have in each building is so different, that made that cap different.
Okay.
Are there any questions, clarifications, comments? So the one we're going to do first is the the in-district policy where kids can move between Richford and Enosburg. That's the one we're talking about. Is there any other comments or concerns or questions about the policy? No? Going once? Going twice? And so, Lynn, this is the one you needed a decision on?
Yeah, I would like approval on this one to go live for the 21-22 school year.
Okay. So do I have a motion that this policy is set to go for the 21-22 school year?
I'll motion.
Okay,
Before you vote, Polly, with the understanding that that note section of number 1 has been stricken.
has been stricken,
Yes.
correct.
So it's only going to read the shall permit up to 10 students per year to attend an elementary school that is not their school of residency, period.
Yeah.
That's the end of note 1 or
Yeah.
section 1. Okay.
I guess I do have one more question. When we approve this, can we, if anything comes up, can we revisit before the 21-22 school year?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
right.
could put that on your agenda if you want to relook at this and say March, because
Yeah,
about
it
me.
might not hurt, just consider some of the questions that came up. So yeah, that might be good. So we have a motion from Wendy. So I'm going to take a vote on whether to approve this for the 21-22 school year. So Kevin,
Yeah. Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
Rick, Mort.
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Did I forget anyone? No, okay. Next is the policy about the inter-school district, and this is the policy about how if somebody lives closer and has to travel through another town, they may apply to go to a different district, but only within the SU. Are there any? Oh, sorry.
Towns that they're driving through. It's not broad choice. It's super specific. That's the way we have written it, to include just like those kids who technically are in Montgomery, or in theory are in Montgomery, but they reside in Richford legally. It wouldn't be that they could choose anywhere. It would be that they could go to Montgomery.
So the town that they are closer to.
Right.
Correct. Okay. For this is where we're gathering feedback. Are there any concerns, questions, comments?
I presented this to the NMV board last week and asked them for guidance to just see if this was something that they wanted to consider going live with for this next school year. They did agree that this was something that they wanted to try to go live with for this next school year. And I need that direction from you. And if that is the case, we would pull the board together in July for approval of this procedure.
Do we know if we have any students that this would impact?
I know I have it. I know we have several students that this would impact that are already in school. I'm not sure any of them would take this as an opportunity to switch schools. I'm not really expecting that. I do know we have one child. The example is that they live legally in Richford, but it's at the very top of Black Falls Road on Montgomery side.
Yep.
So that child will have to be bused to Richford Elementary under our current policies. However, they could be brought to Montgomery if this inter-district policy or procedure is approved.
Okay.
My sense is that it's going to be pretty low numbers. I would think that if you're already in the school system, you probably wouldn't make the change. But if you were about to start in the school system, that probably would be a deciding factor. That's just my thought.
It's my sense too.
Yeah.
Polly, you're one of the few that kind of falls into this category.
Exactly. And so I would not pull my kids out of Enosburg, but had this been open to me when my kids were starting school, it would have been a consideration for sure. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Can we, if there are none, can we just voice direction on whether to bring this back in July?
Bring it back in July. I think it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sound
Yeah.
good? Okay.
What Rick said.
Bring it back in July. Lynn, sounds like we're in support.
Thank you.
So next, wait, my list, those were the only two, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So next, we have a reprioritization of the agenda. Do we need any changes?
We
Did
got
you
to
actually
approve our previous
pass the-
minutes first.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Okay. Past minutes, if you've had a chance to look over, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Kevin makes the motion. Kevin, can you vote?
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
and Mort.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, now we have a reprioritization. Is there anything we need to change? I can't hear you. You're muted. There you go. Oh,
I would just suggest you take the folks from Black River up at the top of the agenda.
yeah, exactly. So that's next on the list is public. And so welcome, folks, to the school board meeting. If you want to introduce yourselves, kind of state your business and let us know what you got.
All right. So thank you for that welcome. I have to say, I miss these things. You know, you might think that's nuts, but I used to go to a lot of these school board meetings, and I haven't for a while, for several months. Anyway, I'm glad to be here in front of you. I have been working with Nate and my compatriot here, Rollin at Black River, to put together some information for you. We've been looking at the Cold Hollow Career Center and a little bit of a feasibility study here. I guess the first question I would have is, how much time do you want to take on this? Because I love doing this and I could talk for a long time, and I've got a lot of information to share, but I can also pare it right down and kind of get right to, you know, the base information if you have less time.
My sense is, why don't you do the base information and then we can kind of pepper you with questions as they come up. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
That makes sense. I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay.
I think Morgan got a little bit of a preview yesterday, just making sure I was able to get the documents over to him. But, you know, this is easily 30 minutes probably.
Okay.
I've got a lot of information for you. So, so given that, I guess I'm going to ask here Morgan to share the screen.
You should be able to.
Okay, so that means, oh, I hit share screen. Oh, I hit share. There we go. So I am going to start with here. This is the Cold Hollow Career Center. This is a site plan from 1995, I think, the last time I worked on this building, when we put the little boiler room addition on and got rid of the electric heat and put in some hot water heat. What Rollin and I did first is we made a site visit up to the school and kind of to assess what you have there so that we understood what it is. This is a little map that shows where the center is, and I'm presuming that all of you know that, but I want to make sure that we're all in the same place here. From Enosburg High School, if you go out what's now the back door of that building, across the old front lawn, down the street, around the corner, down the driveway of the building that's on the site there, the community center, you kind of sneak in to the back door of the Cold Hollow Career Center. The front door is actually over here. And we'll talk more about that, but that's a security issue actually, in that the administration and the receptionist is over here by this door, but everyone's really wanting to come in here because that's how they approach the building. The next plan I have for you is the overall site plan. And as I understand, so this red line here is what I understand to be more or less the property line of the building. The green is the what I'm calling a possible future purchase. I don't know a lot of the details of that, and I don't know where you stand with it, and that's probably just fine. I know that there is some consideration out there for acquiring this piece of property. So all, again, base information. This is the first floor plan of the building, and each of these colors is essentially a different of the Career Center programs. So this is the automotive lab. Down here is construction trades, diversified ag. This is your digital media. And this is the forestry lab. What we've done, if you look down in here, each of those colors, we've managed, because we assigned each of those areas to a particular program, we were able to calculate extremely accurately in this case, how many square feet are in each of those programs, just as base information. In addition to the programs, we identify kind of shared spaces or administrative staff spaces. So the receptionist here and the workroom and some of the offices are in there. And then we have what we call infrastructure, or I more colloquially call it the halls, walls, and stalls. Bathrooms, corridors, the walls themselves take up spaces. And that's usually in the 25 to 35% range of any given building. And we did the same thing on the second floor here. And as you can see, there's a couple more programs here. Here's the automotive trades classroom. There's a shared space here for a computer lab as well. Again, this is just how you use the building currently. And it gave us a baseline from which to start our investigations. Additionally, we took and tried to start to identify how you're using some of the outbuildings on the site. There's a good bit of what I would call unconditioned space out there that you use to store materials. You've got the pole barn over here, which is actually getting extremely heavy use and is very efficiently utilized. There's a wood kiln. There's a greenhouse over there, which you'll see in a little bit. I actually shoved into the conditioned space because there's a heater in there, and it made it simpler in terms of some other comparisons. And then you have that nice old red barn that's there that is a fairly large space, but it's actually pretty empty right now, and I would say underutilized in a lot of ways. There's a lot of things that are stored in there that don't get used very often. But it's a fair amount of square footage. So that was this step one of what we did. The next thing that I did was I took those items. I'm not sure where to put you guys, so you're not in the middle of that. And we do what I'm calling a space utilization analysis, but for each of those programs, I took, for example, here's medical careers that was upstairs. And this column right here is the existing area that you have. So there's a total of 1,194 square feet. The lab classroom in this case is 795 square feet. There's a small bathroom, a utility room, and a number of storage rooms. These columns over here are what I'm calling expressed needs. And I did either a low estimate and a high estimate of to give you a range of how much additional square footage you might consider adding or deducting in a couple of spots from that program to kind of meet industry standards, let's say, or my judgment of what I've seen for tech centers. And I guess this might be a good time to interject that Black River has done a lot of the tech centers in the state. I personally worked on the Green Mountain Tech Center. At the same time, we did the North Country one in Newport. I'm currently working on some of the programs at the Burlington Tech Center. We've also done major projects in Bennington, St. Johnsbury, Springfield. Those may be the big ones. But so we do have some data from which to kind of draw some of these conclusions. So in this case, I'm actually saying that classroom lab in the low end is about 400 square feet smaller than you might expect it to be, to kind of provide all the services and the different teaching stations that we've seen in a medical careers type of program. That we might add actually 400 square feet of classroom space, which would allow you to take the 1,195, and also then put in 1,000 square feet of the separate lab. Well, all right, let me start over. I'm getting myself confused. These are the needs, and I've taken the existing and added to it to get the proposed spaces. So these are the proposed spaces. To get to 1,195, I've added 400 square feet to that room on the low end. On the high end, I added an 800 square foot classroom and kept only 1,000 square feet for a separate lab. So you have a classroom of 800 and a lab for 1,000, versus on the low end, it would be a single room that was about 1,200 square feet. In any event, we went through this for each program. When you get down to the bottom of the sheet, you can see right here that it adds up to a total additional square feet on the low end of about 2,200 square feet. On the high end, about 8,800. I added that 26%, which is your existing percentage for all those other things like corridors and bathrooms and whatnot. So that gets you to a total additional square feet footage of almost 3,000 square feet. Small addition, just enough to kind of take those rooms that are a little too small and make them as big as they minimally should be. On the high end, it comes to closer to 11,000 square feet to really kind of put what I thought was a program out there that was going to be comparable to what I've seen other programs and other tech centers around the state have. Now, to check myself, I went through some of the other programs that we've worked with, some of the other schools, which are these right here. So here's Green Mountain Technology and Career Center in Hyde Park, North Country Career Center in Newport, Burlington Tech Center, and the River Valley Tech Center in Springfield. And I took the amount of square footage they had in their similar program. So for automotive, whereas you have existing almost 3,000 square feet right here, GMTCC has over 4,500 square feet, North Country has 4,900, BTC has almost 4,000, and River Valley doesn't have one of those programs. So in this case, because they were all more or less similar programs, I averaged those three and came out to this number right here. And what you can see is that's about 1,400 square feet less, or I'm sorry, more than what you currently have. Now, when I compare this to what I was proposing on my high end, now you're looking at the average of the other three programs at 4,400 square feet. And I was suggesting a program for Cold Hollow of about 41. So it's still not excessive. It's still not really big compared to what the other benchmark programs have. I did this work first, then I filled these in. And in all cases, the comparable program square footage came out not too far different, 4,066 versus what I was proposing here at 3,452. 1959 for the digital media versus 1821. So I was still proposing probably slightly smaller programs, but not considerably. And that made me actually feel good, in that I felt like my gut instincts here and talking with Nate and the other folks at the center were putting me in about the right spot. So, you know, it was a lot of work, but it makes me feel pretty good about what we want to look at here in terms of the feasibility. We now have.
And I have a question.
Yes, yes.
So I just out of curiosity, did you take a straight average, or do you somehow weigh them based on like populations? Because like, for instance, Burlington and North Country have much larger populations. Does that come into account?
Well, I did think about that, but in the end I did not, because it's pretty typical that any tech center program around the state limits itself to about 16 students.
Oh, true. Okay, I got you.
In a classroom.
Thank you.
Or in,
Okay.
in a place. So I had the same thought. I said, oh my gosh, this is a very small center, you know, but you know, in the end, 15 kids need the space for 15 kids.
No, exactly. That makes sense.
So,
thank you.
So in the end, we took we used these figures to come up with how many square feet we'd want to kind of see if it fits on your site, right? That's really all we're doing here. We identified that you have a need of somewhere between 3,000 and 11,000 additional square feet to put on here. Which, you know, if you walk in that building, you probably can sense right off that it's a little too small, that it needs to be bigger. You know, that things are kind of crammed in there. There's not a lot of extra storage space. So we also looked at things here of how many of those square feet need to be on the ground floor, things like construction trades you don't put upstairs. You also don't put programs on top of those things where you're running vehicles, you know, and you have exhaust in there. You really don't want your digital media lab on top of the automotive trades program. So those are, we use this data to figure out how many square feet you need. That's just a single story. And then I divided the remainder of the program between first and second story spaces so that we had some on the first floor and some on the second floor. So that was step 2. Step 3 would be, let's see, the next one I do would be, back to here. So here's the one worksheet I have that I have to tell you right here is not yet complete. But this was Black River Design and our consultants making site visits, walking through, trying to see what's in good shape, what isn't, what needs work, what doesn't, what meets current codes, what doesn't. We've identified an awful lot of areas here that we can talk about. What I haven't done yet is really kind of finalized, okay, what might you do about it? How many doors do you need to change the lock sets on because they're knobs and not lever handles? What's the cost? And kind of work that through here. I do have some cost information for you a little bit later in this presentation. But what I want to do is real quick give you an overview of what we found. I've divided the, does that help? I know it helps me. I divided this into several different categories. The first one is accessibility, which is exactly what has precipitated, I think, this exercise. We didn't have to do a lot of looking through the building because there was a very nice, very thorough report that told us what was wrong. I've highlighted in kind of the pink here some of the major issues. You know, your door hardware is still doorknobs. Your bathrooms do not meet ADA requirements, neither the single user or the multi-user ones. You've got some classroom doors that don't meet the right amount of clearance in front of them to allow somebody in a wheelchair to actually maneuver around and open those doors. You have spaces like the construction trades locker room, which really wasn't meant to be a changing room or a locker room. That it's just, there's no way that you could ever get a wheelchair in there and kind of maneuver through. So there's, and then of course there's the elevator, which is extremely small and isn't operating properly. You know, you really stop and have to wonder whether those doors are actually going to close if you're going to use it. The other thing is that there were also some deficiencies noted at the Sugar House, which is out on a remote site, and I did not have a chance to go out there and look at that. So I've really been more or less leaving that out of the conversation here. There are the building envelope, your roof and insulation seems to be working really well. That's the good news. The bad news is that when you replace it, that amount of roof insulation does not meet the energy code, and you'll have to put more on the next time you re-roof the building. It's not leaking, it's in good shape. This is something that actually was part of the project 25 years ago when we put the boiler room on. It still seems to be performing pretty well. Your exterior walls are insulated in a way that nobody insulates walls anymore. Fiberglass bats stuffed into stud walls. The exterior siding, well, part of it is brick and is in good shape. Others are like on that solar trom wall in pretty bad shape. And you've got some of those other infill panels that are on there that are literally falling apart, and have, some of them had been replaced as well. Your windows are old. They are not up to the energy code. They should really be replaced as well. The electrical work, I was surprised at the engineer's assessment in that he recommended that even more be replaced than I thought he was going to. Your panel boards are not made by a manufacturer that is in business anymore. So as soon as you have to do any work on those, you're probably just going to need to replace them. Your lighting is still fluorescent tubes. LED lighting exists. It's cheaper than fluorescent these days. It's better lighting and it's better controls. So any project here is going to want to replace those lights and the controls. I'm just hitting the highlights here. From a fire and building code standpoint, the building code requires that any school building over 12,000 square feet, or any area of a school building that you're renovating over 12,000 square feet, needs to be sprinkled. You do not have a sprinkler system in that building. We'll talk more about this as we move ahead. There is a municipal water system in Enosburg. It has pipes that are big enough to run a sprinkler system. What I don't recall is when we put the addition on at Enosburg High School many years ago now, we had to put in a storage system underground with a fire pump and a generator. And I don't know why the municipal water system was inadequate to serve that sprinkler system. And I'm going to have to try to look into that and find out. That makes a huge difference as to how easy it is to sprinkle this building. If you can sprinkle this building off the municipal water system, it sounds awful, but it's really pretty simple to do. If you have to do all those other things, it's going to be a real constraint on the work here. Fire alarm system is old, doesn't meet the code anymore. Seismic restraint. The structural engineer was out just yesterday morning. There are ways to get around that, but obviously the building was not designed in 1980 to meet today's seismic codes. It's not really in danger of falling down, but it doesn't meet the code. Depending on how we add on to the building, you would have to do some significant upgrades to that structure. I do not think that would be necessary in this case. There are workarounds here that are perfectly functional and structurally sound that could avoid those costs. The boiler and pumps in the building are 25 years old, but they're still working. So those are some of the better pieces on your system. Otherwise, almost everything else that's in there on the mechanical systems is original to the building, which makes it 40 years old and ready to be replaced. I recognize that I'm not bringing you very much good news here. The controls are this is incorrect. Let me just delete that. The controls here are a very early version of DDC, direct digital controls, that are now totally out of date from 25 years ago. There are much better options available, and if you're going to be changing anything around, it's going to become necessary to do. From an interior finishes standpoint, flooring, ceiling, painting, you've been in that building, you know, people have been polishing the floors, the carpet's been replaced some, but those things all wear out. And there are plenty of options here for putting in better, easier to maintain, longer lasting materials if you'd like. Plumbing, again, your plumbing fixtures are old. The water piping at 40 years old is probably on the verge of needing to be replaced. You know, is it leaking right now? No, but we've seen plenty of buildings at 40 plus years old that start to get plenty of leaks in the copper piping. Security. This gets back to what I mentioned earlier, in that the office is in the wrong place. And that's not an easy fix. You really have to move the entrance, or you have to move the office so that you can provide that security into the building. So what we don't know, and Nate, I've been meaning to ask you, is whether your classroom doors are able to be locked from inside.
No, we leave them unlocked. Or we leave them locked and open.
I see. Again, the industry standard now is to put door latches on that the teachers can actually lock from inside in case of a lockdown situation. And with a building like you've got there, with a lot of overhead doors that are hard to keep closed all the time, you probably need, it's pretty easy for someone to infiltrate that building if they really, really wanted to. The space needs we'll talk about later. We talked about that a little bit, anywhere from 3,000 to 11,000 square feet. Site improvements. I just got the report from the civil engineer who was up there this morning, just an hour or two before we came on here. There there's a funny thing with the water service. It looks like a 3-inch line coming in from outside into the building. The original plans from 1980 show a 6-inch line that comes to a fire hydrant near the building, and then a smaller line that comes in. But there's no fire hydrant visible out there. So we really don't know what size line comes how far towards the building. I would have to make the assumption right now that that 3-inch line comes from the street into the building. If we're going to sprinkle the building, we're going to need something bigger than 3 inches. Stormwater treatment that you see right here is something that is a very big issue these days in any sites that we work on. And that's, that's something that's going to need to be taken care of on site. The rest of this is parts of the spreadsheet that I will be filling out as I move ahead and I work through this. What you see over here, or what you don't see over here, are some hidden columns where when I look at each of the different options for how you might address your needs, I put each of those in a different column, and I can choose which of those solutions or which of those pieces of work you want to include in that particular scope. So this was designed, this portion of the conversation was, or the presentation was meant just to give you a real quick overview of where your deficiencies are in this building. And unfortunately, they are throughout. There are no spots in here where I say you're in great shape, because even these things that are green, those, both the roof and insulation and the boiler and the pumps, are both 25 years old and were put in when we did that boiler room addition and re-roofing of the project. Now, the structural engineer did say you've got a very nice sturdy steel frame on that building, and the foundation is fine. But beyond that, there's a lot that's not so great. The next thing I want to do, and this is the fun part, is go over with you some of the different site plan options that we might look at. And some of the different options that Roland and I have come up with to look at of how we might address your needs. So this is option A, and I'm calling it minimal renovations, which is essentially, you've got that ADA report. You've now had me go through and maybe find a few things that the fire code or the building code would say, no, you have to deal with this right away. It would mean no additions, but you would just kind of make it work as best you can inside the existing building and spend the least amount of money as possible. In which case, the site plan really doesn't change, right? It's still just the same footprint, the same building. You're probably coming in and out of the building in the same spot. Pretty boring option. The second option that we looked at was, okay, you still don't want to bite off putting on any addition here, or there's things that keep that from happening very easily. But you still need, in my mind, you still need to find about 2,000 to 3,000 square feet here. So I said, if, and I'm not suggesting you do this because this is your decision and not mine, but if you were to reduce the number of programs in the building by 1, that essentially frees up some of the square footage in the building and might allow you to move the administration areas into the classroom that's over here. That classroom gets displaced to somewhere else. It's a little bit of a domino piece, a strategy here. But it allows you to kind of redo the entrance to where you want it to be. If you purchase this land, you could put in some additional parking right there where it would be handy to the front door. Staff could still park here in the rear and have a rear entrance into the building. It starts to work a little bit better. And as you'll see, the costs on this are also significantly lower than some of the other options. And anything that's triggered by having to add on to the building isn't triggered. and there's no other changes necessary to the site. Option C is, okay, what if we put in the 3,000 square feet of addition? Where might that work? Well, we identified 2 spots right off where you could put a single story, 3,000 square foot addition, either A here or B there. That really doesn't change the site plan at all. But it would allow you, with some reworking inside, to meet those minimum program needs. You can see that that fits nicely on the site, doesn't even get into any of the gravel or paved drives. There's still places on this site for additional parking if you wanted to put that in as part of this project. You don't have to tear down any of these other buildings. Still a relatively low impact option. If you wanted to put in the 11,000 square foot option, and again, those aren't the only 2 options. Clearly, you guys, we would have discussions with everyone and we'd figure out exactly how many square feet you needed, and it might end up being somewhere in between. But wanted to see what an 11,000 square foot addition might look like on this building. And again, now you take kind of all this space over here as a single story, and we put a 2-story addition on this part of the building. Now we've kind of eliminated that funny diagonal line that goes through there, squared it all off, gotten rid of this funny point of space that is difficult to use. Still have not kind of covered up much of the paving that's out there. We have kind of blasted over the big giant electrical transformer that's there, but your electrical service is 2 or 3 times easily what it needs to be. So we felt that this also was possible to do, still had fairly minor impacts on the rest of the site here. Again, the parking is still the same. Options, if you needed to expand this pole barn, you could do that. All these buildings are still there. So that's option D. Option E is, okay, we're not going to enlarge this building at all, but we're going to add another building, kind of an outbuilding, or we're calling it an annex. If you're at all familiar with the either North Country or Green Mountain Tech, we built an annex or a separate building for both of those centers. One of them is on the same site, one of them is on a remote site. But I could imagine that something like construction trades and forestry and or even automotive could go out there, though at some point you're going to want to keep the bays that are in this building. But those types of things can go easily onto a larger building that's out there, those things that want to be 1 story anyway. We called it, at Green Mountain, we called it the heavy tech building. But that allows you a lot of flexibility on where you put that building. There's 11,000 square feet. It could go on the new site. It could go over here so that you had a little yard opposite the automotive here to get in and out of. You could put it over there if you wanted to keep the barn. Tons and tons of options. Still, I think, extremely feasible option here. So option F1, if you were going to say, throw up your hands and say that building is just not worth another dime, and we're not going to do anything else to it, but we're going to just replace it. Now you're looking at building a 32,000 square foot building. And we wanted to see what it would look like to put 32,000 square feet on the site. And this split between the 2-story portion and the 1-story portion is based on those numbers that we came up with when we looked at our program space needs that I showed you earlier and talked about how much was on the 1st floor, how much was on the 2nd floor. Anyway, here's one option for putting that in here, that it would allow this building to be built while you're still using the main building, the existing building, and then you would ultimately move into this building and tear the other one down. And that gives you an awful lot of room on this site now for we're calling it program areas, whether that's a spot for the sugar house to be, or the greenhouse needs to go out here somehow, somewhere, whether the diversified ag program puts in an orchard. You know, there's lots of options here for the program area. Or whether that's even a site out here where construction trades could actually put together, you know, a portable building that then is hauled off site at some point. Lots and lots of options for tech centers. We then looked at another option of where else that building might go on site. If you liked having it maybe closer to the street so that it had a presence along Missisquoi Street and you could see it and it felt like more of a part of the neighborhood than it certainly does right now, you could put it up here, relocate the driveway to over here. You could still be driving into all your overhead doors in the back over here. Then when you tear this building down, your program area is all back here, kind of back of the site behind the building. So, and really quite invisible, at least to the street. I'm sure you'd still want to be good neighbors to all the folks whose backyards back up to this, but you already are. So those were the 6 options that I came up with just to kind of run the gamut. And those are the 6 options that I would be putting into that previous spreadsheet that I showed you so that we could get a little bit better sense of kind of comparative costs. But knowing that I was not going to get that ready for you for this evening, I tried something a little different to give you, because I know everyone wants to know how much does this stuff cost, right? What I did here, these are the 6 options I just described to you: A, B, C, D, E, F, right? The minimum code only, no addition, reduce a program, a small addition with a full renovation, a large addition with a full renovation, the annex building with a full renovation, or a complete replacement. What I did is I divided this up into new construction, minor renovation right here, medium renovation, major renovation. And what you need to understand here is this entire spreadsheet is based on that number right there, which is an assumed square foot cost of construction for a new school. And I said $300 a square foot. Morgan actually challenged me on that yesterday a little bit and asked me to kind of compare that to some other data I may have recently received. Morgan, I looked it up, and the comparable number from what is being currently estimated for Burlington High School is 295. So I feel pretty good about the 300. Now, that 300 is infinitely variable. You get to decide what level of finish, you get to decide what level of energy efficiency. You know, there's a lot of variables that go into that, but you know, can it be done for $300? I think it can right now. But the purpose of this isn't so much to give you a bottom line of what this is going to cost, because there's so many things we don't know and so many assumptions that we're making, but to give you a way to compare these options one to the other. And so I took the overall square footage of the building and assigned it to either new construction, one of these renovations. For minor renovation, I took approximately 10% of the cost of new. For medium, half, and for major renovation, 3/4. I think you're easily going to be looking at 3/4 for at least half of this building. In addition, there's some other costs here that we need to take into account. You know, the elevator for one, that is something that's kind of outside of that minimum or minor code or renovation costs. It's a pretty major piece. I wanted to put that in there separately. I wanted to put the greenhouse and any costs associated with that in there separately. The sugar house, I did not include. I figured that would be the same regardless of which option you dealt with here. Site work is outside of that. Building demolition, if you're going to tear down the existing career center, That's going to add some cost to some of these options, but not to others. There's general conditions, which are project supervision from your contractor, and other costs like temporary heat and whatnot. I added all those things together. I come up with a total for what I call the construction budget, which would be the amount of money I would expect you to sign a contract with a builder to build the building. On top of that, there are things like asbestos abatement, hazardous materials removal. For this building, given the fact that it was built in 1980, and I've not heard of any smoking guns there in terms of hazardous materials, I've been assuming right through here that there's zero in that building, and therefore it's going to be a cost that is probably going to be only a little bit of testing to verify that. If somebody knows otherwise, they should let everyone else know pretty quick. In addition, there's what I call soft costs, which are contingencies, owner purchases like equipment, furniture. There's design fees, permit fees, and those run anywhere from 25%, usually at the high end, maybe a little higher even on a tech center, down to maybe 20 on a bigger scale project. I put 25% in here on this project just to be consistent. In the end, what I came up with, just to kind of cut to the end, is for the code repairs only, a little over about $1.25 million, $1,215,000. And again, these numbers look much more accurate than they really are, right? I hope everybody understands that. You know, because at some point you multiply one number by another number, you add them all up, you multiply it with a percentage increase, and you come up with a number that looks really accurate, but it's just based on an awful lot of assumptions. The option B, where you're going to get a renovated building, one less program, probably still a relatively small program in that low to high range that I gave you for the remaining ones, about $6 million.
So I have a question. So, and that was just eliminating a room and kind of reconfiguring, correct?
Yes. Well, a program. Now, in most of those programs, you've got more than one space.
Right. You're right.
And depending on how much space that particular program is currently housed in, would tell you how much space you've got to kind of expand the others.
Okay.
So,
so we're basically looking at a difference of $4 million between the first option and the second option.
Right. But
without addition of space.
Yes, but this gets you a full renovation of the building.
A full renovation.
So you're going to have your new heating system. You're going to have your your new lights and whatnot. You're also going to have a front door that's close to where you want it. So again, with the other options as we move through, this one gets up to about $9.5 million for the small addition and a full renovation. And I'm saying as well, if you get up into the details, that this full renovation is probably a little more complete than the one over here. We're still trying to limit the scope a little bit. You could add a little bit more money and get more renovation. The larger addition gets you up to almost $14 million. Building a brand new building instead of the addition gets you up to about 14.5. You know, and I think in essence, you can imagine that there's not a huge difference between whether that new square footage that's 11,000 square feet is attached to the building or whether it's in a brand new building. You know, what you need with this when it's an annex is a separate heating system as opposed to using the same boilers. There's things like that that kind of raise that price a little bit. And then the complete replacement at your 32,000 square feet is up about $17.5 million. I know these are probably huge numbers for you, but it's my experience is that it's never too early to start talking about things in the right magnitude. So I don't know how long I just took with you guys, but that was the short version.
That was great. I feel like I think that's what we wanted when we were talking about what we wanted for information. We wanted these different options, how much they would cost, what level of work would each option be. I think you hit all the pieces for sure.
Mm-hmm.
What about anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I got lots of questions. I just don't know what they are yet.
Okay.
I am not surprised.
I agree,
that-
but I think, like Polly said, this does give us a gamut of considerations in order to start to pick apart what are those questions we want to ask based on what our options are.
Mm-hmm. One thing I was encouraged about looking at those site plans is that I think we could actually do something here, whichever one of these options you wanted to do. It looks like it actually could work.
I have a question on the A one. That's bringing us up to ADA code and fixing like the other structural heating, ventilation issues.
No, that is probably only the ADA stuff and the most egregious of the other, like they may make you replace the fire alarm system if you're going to do any of that other work. It's actually hard for the code officials to require you to do much more if all you're doing is making ADA improvements. But I think, and this is the one where this square foot method is least effective, because what I really want to do is go back to, this worksheet, because when I start saying, okay, we're going to replace the fire alarm system and we're going to replace the lights because that's got to pay back in 4 years from the energy savings, and we can start to choose which of those things to put into that project, you're going to have a much better sense than trying to throw a square foot cost at that. A more comprehensive renovation, it's a lot easier to accurately use square foot costs. So I know that wasn't a great answer for you, but I would say that is, you're erring on the side of less rather than more there. At this point, you could tell me a budget that you had, how much money you wanted to spend, and then we would go through this exercise right here, and we would choose which of those items to put in the to-do list. And we could come up to that amount very easily.
Any other questions?
Two takeaways that I had based on what John presented today and then the draft run that I got yesterday is, first of all, that you actually have a pretty wide range of options whether or not the prevent your property happens. So that's a good place for you guys to be. And if we do go down the road at all in terms of an option other than just meeting ADA compliance, I think we, being the board, and Nate and Lynn, want to spend a lot of time thinking about the future of Cold Hollow in terms of numbers of programs, because if you do anything from an addition on up, you sort of, that you get one bite at this every 30 years. And so if you're hopeful that it's going to go from 7 to 8 programs, or you're confident it's going to stay at 7 or drift down to 6, you want to be really sure in that answer before you do anything.
Great. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you so much. That's exactly what we needed to get the wheels turning.
Okay.
And so I guess what, Morgan, we just meet and talk, and then how does that work? We get back in touch?
Yeah, I think so. I've got a set of files from John in case the sharing didn't work tonight. But I'm assuming at some point, John, you'll do another review and get them into just a straight up PDF version.
Yeah, yep, make it into kind of a finalized report, so to speak, along with a couple of the reports I'll have from my engineers.
Yep.
As well. You know, I'm assuming, you know, I proposed to you of finalizing this spreadsheet that I've got on the screen right now, and I'm assuming you'd like me to finish that in the next couple of weeks, or you tell me when you. I mean, if I had to have it done in a week, I could easily do that. But you know, give me the deadline of when you'd like to see that, and I'll have that ready then.
What are you thinking, Polly? Do you want to try to get this back in front of you in July?
Well, so that's what I was wondering. I don't know when. I guess July works. That's a month away.
Yeah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to take any longer than that.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
That's
good.
easy. That if
Okay.
that's as early
Yeah.
as you need it, then that works for everybody.
Yeah, July's good.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'll try to get something up to Morgan in a couple of weeks, and then
Okay.
it'll all be nicely wrapped up with a bow on it.
Great.
For your
Thank you
July
so
meeting.
much, John.
Yep. So, all right.
Good to see you, John.
Yes, and is Beth still out there?
Yes.
Well, hello, Beth.
Ron, good seeing you.
All
I
right.
had to unmute myself. I was talking muted.
Hard to
I bet
imagine.
you wished you had that mute button.
There's a lot. Well, never mind. All right, good. I'll sign off now then.
Thanks, John.
Good seeing you,
Appreciate it.
John.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Morgan, I'm having a hard time here. I have to stop sharing. Is that right?
Yeah.
Here we go. Stop share. All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ooh, I'm okay. So next, we are moving on to Morgan. I think you're next. I'm sorry. Is there any other visitors out there? No. Okay. Morgan, your next financial report.
So I sent your financial report out this afternoon. To give you the short story, I think you're going to end the year with a pretty significant fund balance. I have not really updated the anticipated year-end column in that report because once I know that there's nothing to worry about, I stop trying to predict what your principals are going to be spending in the last month of the year. But you'll see on that first page that we're over $1.5 million more in revenue coming in than we had anticipated. And again, just to remind folks, the biggest part of that was due to the true up for the 2019 school year. Enosburg had a good number of tuition kids, and Enosburg and Cold Hollow both had a higher final tuition rate than what we had anticipated when we set the budget. So that's going to set the stage, I think, for something that Kelly wants to bring up in terms of facilities at Richford Elementary. For the FY 21-22 updates, I don't have a whole lot new from when we last spoke about this. The one bit of information I have is House Bill 959 passed the House and is in Senate Finance today, I think. That is the bill that sets the yield rate, which is the one piece of the homestead tax rate that the legislature has influence on. The number that passed the House was actually a little bit higher than what we warned to your voters. So if that gets through the Senate and the governor unscathed, the homestead tax rate that people are going to be seeing for this year's property bill is actually going to be a little bit lower than what was advertised to them. I believe that the reason for that is that the legislature has become comfortable with the idea of borrowing money to deal with the COVID crisis, rather than just pushing that out onto the property tax. So there's a lot in 959 that deals with that and sort of how allowing them to deficit spend in the education fund for FY21 and sort of talk about how they're going to deal with that. But it is a recognition on their part that the revenue problems stemming from this global pandemic and is not something that they feel like it needs to be solved with property tax money. So that's, I think we're in a much better place than we were 2 months ago regarding that. And Lynn, I'll let you jump in and add anything if you want to that.
No, I would agree. I think we had a worry that if they were going to try to solve this in the 1 year, that the impact would have been profound on our taxpayers. And I think that we're all breathing a little easier now that we are kind of feeling like the legislature is tuned into this as a multi-year problem that we're going to have to fix over time. Yes, those are my 2 cents.
So any questions on that? Okay.
That's great. The only question I had on the report, I think was, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. The only question I had on the report, I think you just tipped, Kelly was going to talk to it, was the plants in Enosburg, I noticed was off by 300,000 or something.
At Richford High School it was, and that was due to the Windows project, which crept into this fiscal year.
And
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
the other thing with Richford High School, there was $100,000 that got budgeted for 6th grade teachers at the elementary school, and but really are at the middle high school now. So it was just a mistake in where it was put, and so the elementary school is showing a surplus, and the high school is showing a deficit. But it's just because the money was spent out of the middle high school, not out of the elementary.
Okay.
And overall, I think we're seeing on both districts, because of the switch to remote learning, there were a lot of expenses that we normally would have expected that just aren't happening this year. And I'm sure you're seeing that in your district as well. Cost of supplies is the amount we're spending on supplies is down, and into your field trips and professional development. And there's, a lot of savings there that will help you, because this, the revenue issue is going to still be relevant for the FY22 budget, which you're going to start working on in 3 or 4 months. And so going into that year with a healthy fund balance means that you can buy down the tax rate if say the legislature loses its stomach for these more long-term solutions when we get to that point.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Polly, the only other thing on mine you and I can tag team on, and that's around the property purchase. Polly did make an offer to the realtor, and the ball is in their court. I have run a warning by your lawyer, so when assuming we get to a point where there is an agreed on purchase price, I will call you guys together for a quick board meeting to approve a warning. And again, that would be for ideally in August 11th, I think it is, vote, which is the date of the statewide primary anyway. But we don't have an agreement at this point, so there's no action that's needed at this point.
Great. Anything else, Morgan?
That's all I got.
Okay. Next, we have the principals reports. Kelly, do you have anything other than in your report?
I do. There's a couple of things. Lynn, question for you. Are you dealing with the staffing one? I just have my pre-K teacher on there.
Yes.
Okay. So everything is informational except for I wanted to discuss with the board the possible replacement of the roof. So when I came on board last year, Beth talked to me about the last couple of projects that were in need of being attended to at the elementary school. One was there's been ongoing asbestos abatement taking place, and the one project that needs to be completed in that regard is the gym floor. And then the other project is the roof. And so Beth was informed that, at one point that there was a few years left of the roof needing some kind of repair. So currently, it's a flat roof. It's the old part of the building, and it has a membrane that is covering it. Currently, that membrane has not eroded to the point of having holes in it. So there's not an interior roof problem yet. But our custodian, or our head of maintenance rather, Jerry Capone, has gotten some quotes. And there's only one company that he's found that does the membrane replacement. And we're still able at this point to do a membrane replacement because it has not degraded to the point of the interior portion of the roof needing to be replaced yet. So the information that I attached to my report was from Rod's Roofing, and he gives three different options. Well, one option, the first option, is to replace the membrane with a 15-year leak-free warranty or a 20-year leak-free warranty. The 20-year is what we're proposing. That's $77,125. There is money that has been budgeted for that. The second option would be a full roof replacement. And the other quote that we had received was from another company that also does only the roof replacement. So Rod's is the only one that does the membrane replacement that we've identified. So I'm looking at the roof being the bigger project than the asbestos abatement in the gym floor, thinking that even moving forward, the gym might be a room that's going to be not used much, perhaps even next year. But the roof is something that, certainly needs to be attended to, thinking that at this point, replacing just the membrane is in the long run going to be certainly the cheaper option than once it's degraded to the point of, needing to not being able to replace it and then having to do a full roof replacement. So wanted to inform the board about that, and then anything that you wanted to advise regarding that.
Can I just jump on that?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Beth.
Well, I saw Polly's look of surprise when Kelly said it's in the budget. For the last several years, we budgeted, I believe, close to $60,000, between $50,000 and $60,000 for improvements in that building. And so it's been in there for the last several years to do the asbestos abatement. And so I just saw the look of surprise on your face. The money is in there.
I was just going to say, my happy look must be the surprise look.
And I agree with Kelly, based on what Gary told me when he left, the fuel tanks, which will be done, and the roof are top priorities. And I would prioritize the roof over the gym floor too.
And I would just say that I agree with the priorities. The longer you wait on the roof, the more expensive it gets. The longer you wait on the gym floor, maybe it gets cheaper because the tiles are peeling themselves off. You do not have the budgeted money for this, but you have money primarily because of the that huge tuition windfall. So that's money that you're not likely to see in a future year.
My feeling is that my sense is to go with the membrane replacement versus an entirely new roof. I don't know how everybody else feels.
What's the cost of a new roof?
Yeah.
So with rods, it's 304,000. With Evergreen Roofing, it was 282. And then the third quote we have from Element Roofing, we have not gotten a quote from them yet. They've come to look at it, but they have not submitted a quote. Rods is saying that, you know, it's a 20-year leak-free manufacturer's warranty, or the 15-year. The difference between the 15 and the 20-year is about $5,000.
Do you know if the warranty includes labor and stuff too, or is it just for the membrane? So if it gets a leak, say you have a 20-year, you know, in 10 years it leaks, do they replace the membrane or what do they do? You know?
I don't. I mean, I'm looking at the options. I'm looking at the points of the options.
And then for the roof, what kind of, do you have any idea what kind of roof?
No, I mean, I would have to look. Yes, I do. No, I don't. Rhino Bond TPO roof system. Does that mean something to you?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. That's what it is from rods.
So in terms of the warranty, I don't know this for sure, but I would assume that it means that if the material fails in the next 20 years, they're going to replace it. And if, I don't know, if Jerry's up on the roof doing work in his track cleats and pokes holes in it himself, we're going to be the ones fixing it.
I did include, this is attached to my principal's report, so there is an attachment if you're able to look at it electronically.
Yeah, your attachment didn't come through on mine. I don't know. It did.
Yes, same here. I didn't get it.
Huh. Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Morgan, can I ask you a clarifying question? You said that the money isn't in the budget, but there is money. Are you talking about if they do it this fiscal year? Because I thought I saw that money in the budget for next fiscal year.
I was referring to this fiscal year.
Okay, and I think Kelly was talking about doing it next fiscal year. Is that correct, Kelly? Or are you trying to get it done before June 30th?
I'm trying to get it done this fiscal year.
Okay, so the money,
Yes.
I don't know what, if the money's there then now or not.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll get it done this fiscal year, but we would like to get as much of it done and build if that's the direction you guys give us.
Yeah, I think we probably, my vote would be probably for the membrane, and then, but just, somebody needs to probably look at that warranty a little bit to see if it's prorated, what it includes, that kind of stuff.
I'm with Rick on that. I think if we can get 15 to 20 more years before we have to replace the full roof, it makes sense for that kind of money.
Right. Particularly 20 years. I mean, you could be doing it like what we're doing with the Cold Hollow. You could be doing a redesign. Do you need a vote on that?
I don't think so. Just the direction is
Okay.
fine.
The direction. Amy, you have, or Wendy, do you have any opposing thoughts?
I'm with Rick on it.
Okay, good. So yeah,
Roofing's not my specialty, so.
it's totally mine.
And tangentially related to that,
Brain.
and this impacts both Kelly and Beth's building. As you know, we got a grant to cover half of the cost to bring the phone system up into E911 compliance. We're assuming that you want us to still move ahead on that. I think that the cost of the district between the two buildings is probably in the $15,000 range. So it's a much smaller deal, and it's something we're required to do, although there's no stick backing up that requirement yet, as far as we know.
It would be a shame to let that grant money go. So and we're gonna have to be in compliance at some point. So I think it makes sense. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
it's a grant we don't think is going to be coming back in the future.
Exactly, as far as, sorry, Amy, go.
No, I just said I'm 100% behind moving forward with that. That would be crazy not to at this point.
Same here.
Okay, anything else, Kelly?
No.
No? Okay, great. In home stretch, people, you're in home stretch. Beth.
I'll just add that my teachers all participated in the VTBLC free training that was sponsored by the AOE. I forgot to put that on my list, but they had some in-service time, so they have completed that, which will help them prepare for next year if we're doing anything remotely. So that was my only addition.
Okay, nice. Michelle.
See if I can unmute myself. I was almost going to tell John, be careful what you share, considering how last meeting I was sharing with you how to, I don't know, cooking in Spanish or whatever, instead of my video with Joanne Allen.
Oh.
So, and looking at quickly on my report, I have on number 2 the informational item of Melissa McKinstry we've offered her the position of the grade 2 teacher for next year, conditional on her receiving an emergency license, but that should be action instead of me listing as informational.
Oh, okay.
So
that's exciting.
Yeah,
that's great. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think Lynn has it on a report, so.
I do, actually, I updated my report. I don't do it.
Okay.
I have it. So it's up to you. You can either take it now or as a whole.
Okay. You can wait as a whole if you want.
Okay.
I just read it as information and went, oh, I should have listed that differently. And then thank you for the tree. And Rick, if it was another night, I would have been there.
Like I said, we stopped him from digging holes in your yard.
Oh my gosh. When I got back to the next night, Anthony already took a forklift, knocked down a tree that was not good anymore. And he said, that's where it's going, right up the driveway. So when you go by next time, give it.
Yeah, I was already to dig. Your daughter wouldn't make an executive decision. There's no way she was making a decision.
No, and I was like, I don't know if we should do this, because if it was me, I would have dug it up and moved it where I wanted it anyway.
Oh, that's too funny. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that was a group effort. Amy came up with the tree idea. And then Kevin said, oh, like apple for the teacher? I was like, oh, I never even thought of that. So that's great.
That's great. Thanks so much.
We looked for a freedom or a liberty apple for you, but we couldn't find one.
I said that too. I was like, freedom, retirement, but they didn't have it.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I appreciate that kind gesture.
Well, thank you very much.
Could I say something?
Okay, Rachel.
Polly?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Lynn, go.
Before you move to
Yeah.
Rachel, I was going to say something later, but I guess it makes sense to say it now since we're talking about Michelle and her retirement. I just want to say that, you know, I've been following Michelle around this district for 20-something years, closer to 30 than 20, I would say at this point. And she has been an incredible asset to this district from start to finish. And I think when you look at where Enosburg Elementary is right now, I think that Michelle's leadership and the stability she's put into that school from beginning her teaching career to being a well-established, long-standing leader in that building, that's really, there's no greater impact or no greater predictor of how well a school is going to do than the strength of the leader and the duration that the leader stays. So Michelle, I just want to thank you for your strong leadership, your dedicated service, the work you've done to hire so well at Enosburg, and you established a plan that has that school really positioned well in terms of systems and community connections and support. So I just want to thank you for your years of service. You've been incredible at Enosburg Elementary. And we wish you the best of luck, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lynn. It's been awesome. All of your support made it great to stay there. It was really a lot of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. All right,
Thank you.
Rachel.
I don't have any action items or anything additional. So.
Okay. Joseph? Where did he go?
Joseph had to. That's a part of these virtual meetings. Someone could just walk out and you never see it coming, right?
Right.
Had to go meet with the select board. So he is talking with them about the parade.
The trustees, you made me panic. I'm like, I don't have a meeting tonight.
I get those two confused and never get it right. So he is, he's got a couple of things that I'll put under mine, or I could just do it now, actually, just to, he wanted to celebrate that he told you last month that the facility that makes the diplomas for Enosburg had shut down for COVID, and there was a little panic about whether or not those diplomas would be here on time. And I got a very happy text from Joseph who confirmed that the diplomas will be at the high school tomorrow. So he wanted a plan for me to get those signed and for all of you as board members to stop in and get those signed. So he's hopeful that all of you could set aside some time to go to the high school and get those signed between now and Saturday morning. So could you shoot him an email and just make a plan with him about when you can come sign?
Yep. Sounds good. Nate.
For me, it's the only other action item is my Perkins Grant, and I think I need approval because I don't have a functioning regional advisory board at this point. So I'm going to use you guys, and hopefully that works for the state. But the Perkins Grant is a 4-year plan. We get about $68,000, and that's kind of the federal funds that have actually triggered the ADA civil rights report that comes with those federal dollars. But anyway, that's just real quick. What I spend that money on is about 17,000 is going to be for outreach, like junior high outreach programs that we'll be using to go to Richford Middle School and Enosburg Middle School for outreach programs. And so I'll be using grant funds to pay for that, even though I think it's in the budget full time. So that will save us some money there. $3,500 in outreach activities, about $9,000 in professional development costs if we have to engage in that, $9,500 in the work keys assessment that we have to give all of our students now, being mandated by the state but not paid for by the state. That'll be offered in the fall and then again in the spring. And then we spend about $20,000 on our industrial recognized credentials, everything from GAMA logging, LNA, CDL, all those. That pays for, and another $4,000 for CTSO support, supply, travel, advisor travel, if we ever do that again. And if we don't, I can move some of that money around. But I do need board approval, even though I've already had to submit that a week ago. And Lynn, I'm not sure if you've got the email about approving at your level.
I have not noticed that, but to be honest with you, I Zoomed a lot today, so it could be what's waiting for me after I get off this.
So yeah, if you want to go on the eGrants management system, just to send it to them.
Nate, are you looking for approval of acceptance or approval for applying?
Approval of acceptance. I guess
Okay.
it doesn't matter. Approval of the Perkins application grant.
Of the application grant. Do I have a motion to approve the application grant if there's no questions? If there's
I'll make the motion.
Rick beat me to it.
Okay. So Rick has made the motion. I'm going to take a vote. Kevin,
I
Rick,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
Wendy,
Aye.
so moved.
And then I know you have a lot of we have a lot of stuff going on in the next couple days, but if you do want a free cheeseburger, you can do it. You can drive through Colala Career Center on Thursday night. We're giving all the seniors their completion certificates and their awards and all the other stuff that they may have left at the center that they haven't been able to pick up yet. So that's a 5 to 7. We'll throw you a cheeseburger. And other than that, at some point, I imagine we have to talk about next steps with Black River Design. So I'm not sure when or how that's moving forward. But that's all. Thank you.
Okay, Lynn.
Okay, so I think that we can be quicker because we've met a couple of times in the last month. So you, I think, have a pretty good handle on end of the year celebrations. I think that the principals have shared quite a lot of those details. I will say that I have nothing but praise for the leaders in the creativity and just the thinking that has gone into planning to make these kids feel really special. I think there's great stuff happening all over the district. I've really enjoyed seeing some of the pictures and the enthusiasm of the staff and the excitement from the kids. So well done to everyone for planning great end of the year events. I think the one shift I just wanted to let you know about, just in terms of scheduling at Enosburg High School, the order of events shifted a little bit. So rather than having that event happen at night, it was shifted to a 2 o'clock drive-through to receive the live diploma, followed by a 3:30 parade, and then allowing the watch parties to happen at home, and then wrapping it up there. There is not something after the parade for the Enosburg portion of the graduation. And I think that people at this point are kind of okay with it, because I think that they're looking forward to having the watch parties and the ability to gather with their people after those events. So that's the only change that I know of.
I have to say, I really like that shift, Lynn, because I had some concern about having a late night parade and then sending people off with no next steps. I feel like that brings people back in a little bit.
And what it does too, Amy, is you don't invite people over to your watch party and then say, you have to go now because we have to go to the school. I think that was one of the concerns too. So it can really wrap up after the parade, and then families can gather to do whatever they're going to do to watch the stream of the graduation ceremony. I've come to learn during this time that try as we may, there's never going to be one plan that makes all stakeholders happy. I am confident that our leaders have put a ton of work into making this special for kids, and I think that at this point most of the people are happy with the direction, and I'm pretty proud that our leaders have gone above and beyond to recognize kids in these events. So I think we've done good work there. I gave you a link in this month's notes just around CDC recommendations for summer. So, I'm sorry, for schools for reopening. So in a nutshell, we're at the place now where we're having to be thinking about, obviously, what will the return look like in August, September, when kids come back to school. What we know is that the only guidance that we've received from the Department of Health and the agency has been connected to summer camps and childcare. So there's not anything yet that we've received in terms of what that guidance is going to look like for fall. So I expect that by the end of this week, I'll have some guidance to look at from the Department of Health. And I expect that within the next couple of weeks, we'll have a template and some guidance from the Agency of Education. What the plan is at this point is that we need to be prepared for multiple contingencies, whether it's a full return to in-person, a partial return to in-person, kind of a hybrid, partially in-person, partially remote, or fully remote. So I think that right now we're trying to keep our planning at a pretty high level so that we can be prepared to shift into whatever the situation is that we're in. I also think that it is quite likely that we're going to have the capacity to shift between some of those modes. So that's where we're at right now. Morgan and I are serving on, I don't even know what it's called, Morgan, if it's a task force or a group, something. We're working with a small group of people through VISBIT to look at a reopening plan from the facilities and the safety lens. And I think we did some professional learning the last 2 weeks. And then today we got our first look at a reopening template that VISBIT is putting together. And I am encouraged by the level of detail that is in the template and the considerations that we'll be able to make as a result of from benefiting from the people that they have had help them to develop this template, things that I know I definitely would not have tuned into without VISBIT's help. So looking at this holistically from the building lens and making sure that we're attending to things like how's the water system now that we've had a really low use multiple month period of time, what's our heating and ventilation and air conditioning system looking like, what kind of work do we need to do around safety and cleaning and disinfecting and signage and all kinds of things. So I'm encouraged that we're getting some really usable documents right now that I think are going to help guide us as we move forward. Morgan, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's pretty much it. We've had one of, well, I guess it's going to be 5 sessions total when we're done. And I agree that it's going to be useful, and we're trying to think of ways that we can make it consistent across both districts, but customizable to each school.
There will be some unique things to contend with in each building, just even, flow and where screenings are going to happen and what your signage going to look like outside of your building, what your access point control going to look like for your building. So there's a lot to think about as we lean into what fall is going to look like. So I think what I'm trying to communicate to people is I understand the frustration that I can't answer the question right now when people say, what is it going to look like? Is everybody going to be fully back in the fall? None of us have the answer to that. So I'm trying to just, acknowledge that I understand it's frustrating and people really want an answer now. But the reality is that, we're still in this situation of responding to a pandemic. So we're having to respond in real time to the guidance that we're receiving. So we can't move forward until some of those puzzle pieces are in play for us. But I can, with confidence, say that we're going to have the right people leaned into this work. And as soon as we can communicate what the plan will be for fall, we certainly will do that. But I don't want to prematurely communicate and then have to roll it back once we receive the guidance. So I think as hard as it is to wait, it makes more sense to be realistic and responsive to whatever direction we're given.
I do have one quick question. So is your impression that it's going to be a top-down approach so each school is going to be the same, or are we going to have the ability to improvise within the guidelines?
So what I learned last week was that there will be some prescriptive measures where we will all be the same. And then there will be some local control measures where we'll be able to have some flexibility to make some decisions at our level. We don't have an indication yet what would fall under prescriptive and what would fall under the local control piece of it. So I think it's a little of this and a little of that, Rick. Any other questions on fall? So the summer programming has been, planning for the summer programming has been a little bit complex because that guidance has shifted a little bit in some of the things that we were hoping to be ready for in terms of supply chains and resources. We're not as confident on right now. So we haven't made a final decision about summer, hoping to do that by the end of the week. I'll make sure that when I communicate that out, maybe as early as Friday or the following Monday, I'll make sure that I CC the board on that. The goal around summer programming, we clearly would love to have kids come back into the building. We know there's a need for social emotional learning and support some of those peer interactions that people have been missing. Our number one priority has been health and safety and making sure that we don't bring kids in until we can be in compliance with all of the guidance. And in order to comply with the summer programming guidance, we have to contend with multiple guidance from the CDC, the Department of Health, and the Agency of Education, and it's pretty comprehensive. So we're doing our best to lean into it, and we'll offer what we can for kids. And it may be that there's a piece that's in person, and it may be that there's a piece virtual, or it might be that we have to shift and make it completely virtual. If at any point that I don't feel like we can ensure health and safety, and that we have the capacity to follow guidelines, I will definitely require that it goes fully virtual. So any questions on summer? So in terms of meals, I know Dawn has been waiting patiently on this call. We have meal delivery happening right now through the end of June. I think our last meal delivery right now is scheduled to go out on buses on June 30th. And Dawn, those meals will feed kids through July, what is it, Dawn? 6th, 3rd? I don't know if Dawn is still there.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to get myself unmuted. The meals that go out on June 30th will feed the kids right up until July 3rd, which is that Friday. And then July 6th was the date to transition into the pickup mode at the schools. That was also when the camp mode, when summer school session was going to start.
So we've been having a lot of conversations about summer meals, and we recognize that a lot of our kids and families definitely have food insecurities going on within our communities, and we have a significant worry about the number of kids who will be able to access if it's pickup only in our schools. And that originally was where we were planning to shift to, because one, the transportation piece is incredibly expensive. We worked out some numbers and we thought, okay, well, we think we won't necessarily lose money if we're able to keep our numbers up on the cost of those, or on the number of people accessing those meals. But when we reached back out to the bus company, they let us know that they're actually closing down for the whole month of July. So we don't have the capacity to contract with our bus company to do meal delivery, even if we wanted to. So I will tell you that Dawn has been a champion for kids and wanting to make sure that we can get meals to all the kids who need meals. And she has come up with some creative solutions for how we might be able to accomplish that. In order to make that happen, we have some requests of this board, actually, because you actually have some resources that you own that might be able to help us as an SU to be able to accomplish some of these goals. You actually have some buses that you own at Cold Hollow, and you have a van that you own at Richford High School. And this did not come up. It certainly didn't register in my thinking until Dawn brought it up last week. So I'm gonna I know Morgan and Dawn have been working more closely on this than I have, so I'll defer to them to kind of follow up with the thinking about if we could pay the ERUUSD to be able to use those resources that you have to be able to accomplish this for the organization. So either one of you feel free to jump in here.
I think that's exactly it. We've also been kicking around the idea of, do we rent, cargo vans from a car rental agency? But if we've got the van in Richford and we've got some buses in Cold Hollow that are just going to be sitting there for the summer, we'd rather rent those from you guys.
I just want to say that the van, I have no problem with you using it, but there's 2 seats in the front and then it's retrofitted for a wheelchair with a lift. So I haven't looked in the back in a while. So you want to look at that to see how useful it'll be. It might be great because but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and if this is I guess it was a yesterday idea, right? That this came up. So we are still in the beginning phases of that, but we think doing that and with scheduling, which Dawn can talk about if you want, that we would be able to use, we'd likely be able to use those vehicles and keep roughly the same schedule going for families over the summer.
And Morgan, I didn't mention this, but I believe on those 2 short buses that we have, if you tape over or black out the school bus signs, then it's no longer a school bus and anybody can drive them.
That's what I was going to ask, is about whether you needed to have like CDL.
Yeah, on the short buses you don't. So, well, I mean, you still need a bus driver's endorsement, but I think if you
Drivers driving those, and would you have to pay them at that? Okay.
Dawn, do you want to talk a little bit about planning around that? Because she's also thought through some of those obstacles as well.
So what I'm kind of thinking in the back of my mind is that we've got some teacher para staff already working within our SU that has a bus driving license, one being Penny Lumbra and one being Frapp, who normally runs that one of the Cold Hollow buses for the summer program anyways. So those were 2 people that kind of came to my mind really quickly about driving the buses. And then I believe, I have a pretty good relationship with the bus company, as I used to drive one of their buses and I still have my bus license to drive. So I believe that there are some bus drivers that work for the bus company who may possibly be willing to take and come over onto our payroll for those few months, for that month, and run a bus for us, drive one of those Cold Hollow buses. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. And then I agree with Nate as to those 2 smaller buses. You need a school bus endorsement, but it's a different type of school bus endorsement, whether it is because it depends on the number of students or number of people that you have on that bus is where your break off point is on that. So for the bigger bus that you have, it definitely would have to be someone who has an air brakes endorsement, because that bus has air brakes. That would be like a Penny Lumbra or anyone else who drives one of the large buses for the school. I don't know if Frapp's bus license covers that piece of it. So that's kind of where I'm looking at to see if there's some drivers within the SU, that are already driving that would be willing to do that and feed these kids. Because I know that I can name off already a few drivers who really look at the kids that they have on their bus routes and are really saying, we'll do anything that you need. When we just changed bus routes and dropped some bus routes out of each town, we had some drivers that were absolutely amazing and said, give me wherever I have to go. I don't care how long it takes. We want to feed the kids. So I think that we can come up with some support for people to help us with that type of stuff. So I'm pretty confident that we can get something there. And then as far as staffing issues, I've kind of pulled all of the kitchen staff in all of the schools. And I'm pretty confident that we can come up with enough staff that are willing to work and to run this model we have kind of pondered, Morgan, Lynn, and I have kind of gone back and forth and discussed, do we want to keep it with a 2-day-a-week delivery, or do we want to shift to a 1-day-a-week delivery? I've gotten some guidance from the state on different things that we can do differently, and we can change some of the meals around. It's kind of been my motto of, through all of this COVID, of taking and trying to send these kiddos home something that they can just go to the cooler, take out of the cooler and eat, and not have to worry about cooking it. And that type of a model, just because we didn't know what was going on with their homes or with anything else. So that was one of the things that I was kind of looking at, and I have talked with the state. We can transition and we can do a few different things where we can put some frozen items into those meals, and by putting the frozen items into the meals and putting frozen juice into the meals and whatnot, that kind of helps out to keep the meals cold in the coolers for these parents that don't always put an ice pack in there. Just something that, you know, someone may not think of. So there's that possibility. I would need some para help on some packaging days, because it's very difficult. And some of the schools within the SU, the month of May, we ended up taking and sending out 34,000 meals, I believe it was. And so that's huge. And out of that 34,000, I think it was like 16,600 of those meals came right out of the Enosburg site. So Enosburg is definitely one of our biggest sites, because they're doing Enosburg, Sheldon, and Bakersfield. And so with saying that, we're looking at, if we were to transition into this model and do this, we're looking at, instead of having so many different bus routes and having a bus driver only work 1 or, hour and a half a day, typically that's what their routes are looking like right now, is an hour. If we transition that over and put that bus on the road for like a 7-hour day, delivering meals all day, they could take and deliver. We could run that with the 4 buses, and we could run, if we needed to change meal sites, like we could take and do, Berkshire and Richford one day. We could do Enosburg, Sheldon, and Bakersfield one day. Or we could take it, we could mix up. We'd have some flexibility on what we could do. What we would do is we would roll out, the bus, and the staff would still be there building the meals for the next load that the bus would come in. So instead of taking and throwing all of those meals on at one point in time when they first got there in the morning, we would take and have that bus come back and load back up, because to think realistically that a bus is going to put that many meals on it in one load is thinking nearly impossible. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I think I figured it out, and it was like, what we're running right now is 21 hours of busing when we figure out all of the sites and all of the routes that we have. And so realistically, I think that we easily could take and drop that down, into the 4 buses, and give the bus drivers that are coming in and working for us at least a regular pretty full day of work, rather than just ruining their day for an hour or 2. So I think that's hit pretty much everything that we've talked about. If you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I just think it's amazing. It's so impressive what you guys have done. And Dawn, it's just been awesome to see what's being produced out of the schools. I end up getting to see Richford Elementary because I drop materials off to go on the buses for a couple kids that have moved up there. And they are busy. There's about, 5 or 6 at least packing lunches in the morning on Fridays. And, I constantly, am able to pop over to Enosburg Middle High, but it's really impressive. Dawn, you have led such a great task, and it's amazing to I just see kids posting with their parents on my Facebook feed too. What great lunches, and they're sharing that, and it makes a big difference. Your work's appreciated.
Thank you very much. I don't see a downside to doing this. And if we have the buses, it makes sense to use them. But I might be missing something if anybody else has to chime in.
I would echo what Michelle says. I think it's been incredible. And, we've said all along that the kids can't access the learning and do the remote things if they aren't getting food and their basic needs aren't being met. And Dawn has been able to provide that. So that's kind of the essential base for many of our kids. My only question is around you mentioned potentially needing para staffing. And I would just want to know like an approximate number, because that's something we would want to push out really soon if you knew essentially how many you might need in days of the week, because a lot of our paras, since they're not technically employed in the summer, usually takes some alternative summer jobs. And often those are annual recurring jobs they pick up, and so they may be already expected at another site. But if they knew there was an opportunity to continue with the school, they might take it. We just would need to make sure we gave them enough notice to have the option.
I think we agree 100% with that, Rachel. We planned kind of as far as we could plan without knowing if we could use the resources that you have for transportation. So I think Dawn has a pretty good handle on if this board does grant permission for us to use those. I think that we could try to turn that around pretty quickly. I do think that I suspect Dawn would be communicating that out to all of you as principals and or to the support staff.
So if we're granted the permission tonight to do that, then my next step for tomorrow is to take and to go through and to look at every site and how many people we have in there, and to figure out, what sites we can put together and how many support staff we are going to need at each site. I know that some support staff has reached out to Lynn and asked Lynn if there's any summer hours available. I know that I've got some Richford support staff who've reached out to me and some Berkshire support staff who've reached out to me. And so that's my process. My thought process is if we can get that approval tonight, then tomorrow I can look at all of that, and then I can communicate all of that either via email tomorrow to the principals or on our leadership meeting, our Zoom meeting on Thursday morning. That's also a topic that I could get into if we needed to there.
Are you going to reevaluate who needs meals, or are you just going on based on who needed it during the school year? How is that going to work?
So the way that it's been going is that anybody at any point in time can call their administrative assistants in their schools, and they can get added to the list or taken off from the list.
Okay.
That's kind of my thought process in this. However, I think that if we transition and we go into this delivery mode, I think some of our administrative assistants, I don't know for positive, but I'm thinking that maybe some of the administrative assistants may not work all summer long. So we may have to reconfigure that or rethink that as to what the route, what we do with that portion of it. And at that point in time, if we have to do that, that may be something where, if we have a para staff member who's willing to do some of this, that could be something that could give a para, a few extra hours. Because ultimately, I think what we're kind of looking at is if this goes through and we do this, if we can take and rather than offer a para 1 day a week job delivering, if we can maybe come up with something where they get a few more hours, I think it's going to be more enticing to someone to work rather than it is if it's just an hour here or an hour there. So I think there's ways that I got to look at this, and there's going to be things in the road that are going to come up that we're going to say, oh, wait, okay, we got to come up with this one. But I'm pretty confident that we can figure those out. I think that if we're going to keep the delivery mode going, I think that we will probably take and have the principals in each building do a robocall, or even Lynn do that call, just to let parents know that we are doing that. One of the other things that we had kind of said was, you know, do we take and do out a quick survey to see if this is something that parents want to continue? So, you know, those are things that we've kind of thought of, and then, you know, we're going to look at it and say, okay, what route do we want to go?
And if I can answer Rick's question, which he hasn't asked yet, we have been, you know, looking at the finances, and obviously if we're renting vehicles and paying people to drive them and paying, you know, maybe some additional staff in the kitchens, there's obviously additional costs with that. But when we looked at the likely decrease in participation if we switch to just a pickup model, we're feeling like if we can keep the numbers close to what they have been, it's actually going to be probably more financially sustainable to do the delivery.
The other piece that I just want to add there is that, you know, if we're looking at this through the lens of equity and the kids who need it the most, if we're in a pickup only mode, the kids who have the least amount of resources are less likely to be able to access those meals. If we have a way to continue to deliver, the kids that need it the most can have it delivered straight to their door. So that ensures access to our neediest families.
Yeah, no, I think delivery is important, and I actually think that if you look at things and you can do it twice a week, I think it's probably better than once a week anyway. But no, I think it's certainly fine with me to use those buses. And then the other thing I just want to say, I drive everywhere around the county, and it's amazing how many kids are waiting for the bus to come. It's kind of fun to watch them, actually.
Yeah. Is that something you need a motion on, Lynn, or do you just want a direction?
I don't think we need a motion. Morgan, do you think we need a motion?
I think direction's fine.
Right. Mort or Wendy or Amy, do you want to weigh in, or Kevin?
I'm good with it. I think we need to continue to do it.
I'm good with 2 days. I think 2 days a week, not 1 day. It's too much food.
Yeah, and you don't want to encourage that kind of like waste.
Right.
Even, anyway, yeah, I'm with 2 days too.
Even the 2 days, it's overwhelming when you have 4 kids. Like, it's a lot of food. So 2 days. That's my input.
I think it would be good to be able to use our para staff, especially if we're going to have a reduction of summer services, but to be able to allow those people who typically participate in that to still have an option in-house. I do wonder about some sort of recalculation of making sure people are still interested in the meals, but I wouldn't want to have it be where people have to re-sign up, because I don't think that the people who might need those resources the most will be able to do those things and have those steps in place for their children. But I'm wondering if there's some availability of like calling the people who are getting them and saying, do you want to continue? And not, if you don't get a response back saying, nope, we're going to take them off the list, but just making sure people are given an easy access to get out in order to sort of save some of those resources as well, if they're going to waste, particularly in summer when people's circumstances might change.
I agree.
One of the things I was thinking of doing, Amy, was writing a letter, obviously, because I've been trying to outline when things change. So outlining what the summer meal delivery would look like, and one of the ways, because there are not staff in the buildings to answer those phones every day, is creating a form that people could fill out or mail back if they want to stop meal delivery. I think that I'm a little worried about, I heard all of you say, yes, 2 days would be the best option, and I hear that and I understand the why behind that. I think that the reality is Dawn has to go back and she has to figure out whether or not she has the staffing to be able to do it one way or the other. So I'm hopeful that you can give her the guidance and, you know, trust that she's going to make the best plan on how that's going to be delivered, whether she can do it in 2 days or if she can only offer it in 1 day.
That makes sense. I mean, you can only do what your help supports, right? But I also think it's a good idea because, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to go to those summer jobs that they're not hiring because they can't sustain a full staff. So I think it also gives staff another option to take on a few hours. For sure.
I would just, I would encourage that the opt-out option required the least amount of response effort possible, because I think people who don't want it are like, well, whatever, I'll just keep taking it even though they're not going to use it. But if there's a really easy way to opt out, that's why I was thinking of like calling them and saying, are you good with the meals? Do you want to continue or no? Or if someone calls you and you can just give them the quick yes or no. But if it requires effort on your end, you might just be like, whatever, I'll keep getting it even though I'm wasting it.
Right.
Not that I know anyone that would ever do that, but it's human behavior.
This is my brain going. I wonder, is there a way to create like a cell phone number that people can text like stop to, you know, like when they say you don't want this anymore, text something. I don't know if that's even feasible. It's just in my brain.
I have no idea.
But Dominic can probably tell us.
People. I know
Dominic
people that.
Yeah.
That is a great, like, if there is some sort of technology like that, that is a great idea.
Or, you know, like people are going to camp for the summer or not, or for a week or whatever. It's like there has to be some kind of easy way that I think that they can communicate so that you're not wasting, but you're also getting things where they need to go. Anyhow. All right. Thank you so much, Dawn. Greatly appreciated.
I'm really impressed, Dawn, by all of your knowledge that's coming into this and how helpful it is.
I just wanted to chime in real quick, Dawn, just because my buses are at the shop and I might have missed it. When do you need them?
So we're looking at our first, by going this route, it's going to change our last delivery of the June 30th a little bit. I've got to finish continuing to figure that piece out, but I think that we probably will take our first delivery going out with your buses, Nate, will be on July 6th.
Okay, I'll have them back. No problem. Thank you.
Okay, if you need any help getting them back, let me know, because I can definitely go down and drive one back for you.
I thought you were going to say you were going to crawl under the hood and fix it. I was going to say, Dawn, what can't you do?
Can't really do that, but I can get in them and drive them because I do still have my license.
Okay, so
do you have anything else?
We talked about the fall return and we've talked about the financial implications under Morgan. I don't have any resignations to bring you. In terms of hiring, we do have some action, and principals, let me know if I've left anybody off. For Enosburg Elementary, we have Melissa McKinstry in an elementary position. For Enosburg High School, we have Amy Merriam for a halftime French position. Timothy Trevithick, I don't think I said that correctly, but that was my best attempt, for the assistant principal position. For Richford Elementary, we have Kim Atkinson for pre-K. Emily Fleury, you don't need to approve this, but it's just for your FYI. She'll be shifting from a pre-K position to an elementary position. And I don't have any additional for Enosburg Middle or Richford Junior Senior High School or Cold Hollow. Principals, did I miss any? So we'd look for a motion to hire those folks.
I'll make the motion.
Wendy has made the motion, so I'm going to take the vote. Rick?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Kevin?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
So moved.
In terms of remaining open positions, the principals have been doing a really good job filling these positions. I think the only ones that I'm aware of that we still have left open, Enosburg High School is still looking for family consumer science. Enosburg Middle School has a grant-funded position for part-time literacy intervention. Richford Elementary is still looking for a school counselor. Richford Junior Senior High School, I believe, still has a grant-funded literacy intervention position. Is that filled, Beth?
Kyle Kramer.
Oh, yes, we already did that. Thank you. So that's just informational for you. One other action, because we do still have two that would be under your realm, the school counselor and the family consumer science, is that you would grant me authority to hire away from the table for summer.
I'll make that motion.
And Kevin's made the motion. I'll call the vote. Kevin?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy?
I
Yep, you have authority.
Thank you. Under student, I don't have anything under student at this time. I already gave you the one piece about Joseph's diplomas. And the other piece, Beth sent me a reminder, which I appreciate. You had a question about that inter-district transfer procedure at last month's meeting, and we didn't talk about that at the start of the meeting. So you would ask the question about the money piece. So this would be, Morgan and I have sent this off to Pietro, and Morgan, please correct me if I've got any part of this wrong. So we would handle this the same way we're handling your high school choice. So you would have not high school choice like traditional high school choice, but Act 127, whatever that number is, it just jumped out of my head.
129.
Thank you. Act 129 high school choice, where the money stays in the town of residence. This would be the same thing. So if Polly, your kiddos had chosen to go to Montgomery instead of Enosburg, Enosburg would have gotten the money, the ADM money for your kids, even if they attended Montgomery. So the money wouldn't follow the kid in this. We asked the question of Pietro about what would happen in a situation like this if a child is going to a non-resident school and there were extraordinary costs. And I think that's where we kind of got hung up. And that's the conversation that'll happen at the SU board as well. And one of the things that we talked about was having the ability to make an agreement that if there are additional costs associated with the child, that they would be billed back to the town of residence and not incurred by the town where the child is going to. So that would have to be an internal agreement that we would ask the SU board to make at the time of approving this procedure. Morgan, what did I miss?
I think you got it. And the way that Act 129 currently works is that special ed costs that are still at the district, which is primarily a paraeducator at this point, those costs are allowed to be billed back to the district. So that wouldn't be any different than what we see currently for high school choice for towns that actually operate a high school.
I think those were the two big areas that you had questions about. Beth, did I miss anything? Thank you for the reminder. If there are no other questions, that is it for mine.
I do have a quick question about the graduations. So who is going from the board? Are we all able or allowed to go, or is there only room for a certain number of us?
Beth, do you want to take that one or do you want me to take it?
Sure. So May 28th, they changed regulations again. And the way I'm interpreting the latest is that we can have more people out of vehicles if they're wearing a mask, and family units maintain a 6-foot distance between one another. The trick is that we're allowing the kids to have one car if parents are together and 2 cars if they aren't. And the reason for that is we're trying to do parking very equitable so that you can see from your vehicle. Everybody has equal viewing from their vehicle. So it's more of the parking that's an issue. So like if another board member wanted to come, you would need to get a ticket, and you could park out back. Like I'm going to park out back and walk around the front, and just maintain a 6-foot distance from everybody, because I think it's important that family members get good viewing.
So I think that your limitation on your numbers, I am wondering if Kevin's ask is about, you know, historically the board is kind of in the front row in Richford's. So
Yeah.
would there be a place to maybe social or physically distance the board to be sitting off to the side of the stage? And would you be worried about that number? I know it's not a stage. I know it's a trailer.
Can I let you know that? I don't know. It's been delivered today. I got my handyman husband working on some a curtain and a railing and some things like that for me. And Jane and I we're going down tomorrow to like really check everything out. I think probably, but I don't know for sure. And I think the one question would be that the secretary outlines in the guidance that we have to have as few people as possible touching the diplomas. So I'm not sure. I think that probably one board member giving the diplomas is a good idea. Would you agree with that, Lynn?
Yeah, I think that I was interpreting Kevin's just in terms of being present. We definitely can't do the multiple people touching piece this year. I think that that part would be much trickier.
So
yeah, it was more about being present than being handing off and, you know, changing like in years past, you know, if it's a Montgomery student, a Montgomery board member or Berkshire. So it was just more about being present. And if it's an issue, then it's fine. I'll watch online like everybody else.
Can I let you know, Kevin, tomorrow after I know more? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
And Rick, you're still planning on going to Enosburg's graduation?
Yeah, probably better.
Yeah, you should. But I mean, as a board member, not just a parent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Rick gets to hand them all out there. You don't have to worry about me forgetting to pass the baton this time.
That's
like I did last time.
And Wendy, we'll be in touch with you once we know more after tomorrow too, because we need to work out those details tomorrow.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. I was gonna give you a call. Okay.
Okay.
Since we're asking questions about Rachel, returning materials tomorrow, what's the window?
So 8 to 3 tomorrow or Thursday. And yeah, just drive up and a bunch of us will be there to meet vehicles, collect stuff back. We have the tech department coming in to sort through devices, and then we have a bunch of para staff in to help sort through work and more hard copy paper things that are being returned.
Okay. I'm gonna probably sign diplomas, so I'll park.
That's allowable. We'll allow it.
Okay, thanks.
I forgot to add too, if you drive by the school, I'm hoping after this call I'll get to finish them, but I've been making lawn signs for all of the 8th graders that will be out front again, hopefully tomorrow. I have 6 faces left to decorate, and I plan to put them out, and then when you guys do your drive-through awards on Friday, every kid will get to take their lawn sign home, so you can proudly stick it in your front yard. So I only got a little bit of glitter on my own carpet here, so I think I'm doing a pretty good job. It's been a fun way to spend my evenings. My husband thinks I'm crazy, but that's nothing new. So
sounds very fun, Rachel.
I can totally see you sitting in the middle of the floor, covered in glitter with markers and paint in your face.
Oh my God, it's exactly what it is. It's like, yeah, right in the middle of the living room. We have white carpeting, by the way, but if I ruin it badly enough, maybe I'll get the hardwood floors I've been asking for since we bought this house. So.
Well, the only people that will see mine are the fish and the deer, so don't work your too hard.
It's already done.
All right, so Lynn, you're all set. Now we're on to board business.
Yes.
Okay. Board business. As Morgan pointed out, I've made a offer on the property. I received a message back saying it's in the seller's hands and just waiting to hear on that. I was going to give a call on Thursday just to check in, see where we are with that. What else was on the agenda? I don't have it in front of me. Any future agenda items? Clearly Cold Hollow. What was the other one we kicked down the road? Cold Hollow. There was something else by July. Oh, the policy.
Yes.
Intra-district, right. Any other agenda items you can think of?
Do we want to work on the Cold Hollow thing in our small group again, or as a full board?
I like the small group thing, but I feel like you can kind of solidify what those questions are that you want to ask, maybe more detailed. That's up to you. I'm game, whatever.
Yeah, I think the small group, that way we can, I can go over some of the options and other ideas and thoughts, I guess.
Can you remind me who the small group is again?
I think it was you, Rick, and Amy, but I felt like there should be someone from Richford.
Richford, I wasn't in it.
Amy, Rick, and Mort.
Yeah.
It was Amy, I, and Mort, I believe.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I'm up.
Scheduling.
What's that, Lynn?
I'm just asking Nate if he's taking care of scheduling that, or if that's something.
I can, and I just wonder if it'd be better to be. Can we go in the school, Lynn?
Yes, as long as you wear your cloth face mask and you exercise 6
Okay.
physical distance.
So I would think that maybe I can send out an email with some dates that might work, dates and times where we could actually meet at the school. Would that work for you guys?
It makes sense.
I think that's good, and maybe we want to hold off till we get that last piece from Black River.
So maybe at the end of the month.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Good. Anything else? Right. Zip this up. I personally want to thank all of you for doing, I completely understand with my whole heart and whole brain how hard this has been. And I'm glad that you folks are calling the shots. So thank you so much. I actually get more information from you folks than my own district, so thank you. Anyway, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make it.
Okay, I have a motion. Kevin made the motion. Let's take a vote. Kevin?
Aye.
Rick?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Wendy?
Aye.
All right, you're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank